you would come along during the flood and immediately after the flood, and you'd be saying, do I see any cracks that weren't there before? And what do they mean if I do see some? Do I see a misalignment? So this bridge is supposed to be in a straight line. If I find that the middle has gone downstream, I've got a concern if it was straight before and now there's a bit moved. So I'm looking for things that are obvious that tell me there's a problem. The things that I can't see would be scour under one of the piers. So where the water has washed away the foundation for that pier. I can't see that. That's what probably has happened on the bridge from the CP rail. So the bridge inspector looks at it, it's aligned, it looks straight, he doesn't see any cracks, should be okay on the visual inspection. What he can't see is that the fact that the foundation has disappeared beneath him. So when you put some weight on it, there's a problem. On all of these bridges, when the water's gone down a bit more and has got a little bit more clear than it is now, I expect the city will be putting divers down to look at every bridge pier, every bridge abutment, looking for scour to make sure that those things are still sound.
Well, we had a number of things. We had the rail line, the south rail line was damaged, and they had to replace some of the track in there, or at least repair the track, the systems in that. McLeod Trail here was washed out and had to be rebuilt. The bridge on 25th Avenue was, again, it washed around the bridge, and so it had to be repaired. A number of the banks along the river were eroded severely, and that's going to be one of the issues that we're going to have to repair. Flooding at Princess Island, the zoo, so areas like that.
Peak flows that we saw on the Bow, so 240 today, was about 1,700 in the same location here. On the Elbow, again, 10 CMS today, we saw peak flows of about 700 below the Glenmore Dam. So really significant flows that we hadn't seen before. We have a really remarkable pre-treatment facility at both the Bearspaw and Glenmore water treatment plants. These are both newly constructed facilities. The Bearspaw is about 5 or 6 years old now in operation. Glenmore is about 2 years old. And they were really remarkably able to handle this enormous load of silt and organics coming into the system and treat the water and still maintain drinking water quality. We had to slow the plants down a little bit. As you can imagine, it's quite a challenge to treat chocolate milk. But the plants remarkably made water that was easily within our drinking water guideline. We also made sure that we had lots of chemicals on site because those kind of conditions require lots of water treatment chemicals to manage, again, the silt and the organics. And we had extra staff on hand to make sure that any part of the process that was having some trouble, any maintenance issues, we had maintenance staff ready to go should there be any mechanical or electrical problems. And we had a few extra operators on staff as well because it took a little more manual effort to make and a little more manual watch on the system to make sure that it was remaining in good shape.
Right after the event, the priority was, hey, get the sanitary system working. Without the sanitary system working, people's basements don't drain. All those floor drains are connected to the sanitary. So that was priority number one. Priority number two was to start dewatering the town and getting that water out. So we were working on the berms the very next day. We had that going right away. And then it was starting to bring in and gear up all the pumps, mob all the pumps in. The sanitary sewer in the system goes through a single lift station. So it goes through multiple, and then eventually it gets to the number one lift station, which pumps it to our treatment facility out of town. And that was the first time that station had ever failed. And that was critical to get that one back online. And again, our operators were phenomenal in getting that back up and running. After the berms were constructed and built, our temporary berms, because a large portion of the east side of town was flooded, so we wanted to break that up into more manageable sizes. Once we did that, the pump crews were already setting up on the southern basin. We started pumping there, and as soon as the pumps were running, pumps had already been brought in for the north side, and they were already coming, and we moved up there and we started right away on that. We had a large assortment of pump sizes that were brought in. Three of our largest were a 24-inch intake with an 18-inch discharge. To our knowledge, there's only 4 of these pumps in Canada. 3 of them were on site here in High River.
As a company, we made a conscientious decision coming from our CEO, Brian Pierce, who's also a professional engineer, to help out the community. We ourselves, as a Stewart Weir, as a company, has been around for about 100 years in Alberta. We've helped, with the infrastructure in various corners of the province. So we have an invested interest. But not only that, as engineers, it's our calling. A lot of senses itself. I mean, to see the impact in our own backyard and having that opportunity to get involved. What happened started off was the compassion from our staff, our company, that started off. I mean, you listen to the stories from the people that we knew that were affected and how helpless they felt when it occurred. And for the help to go in there and for them to get that support, it gave them hope. And that's the biggest thing that we're getting. At the same time, any staff that we talked to, I mean, one individual that I talked to from our company had a big smile on his face, came to us and he said, listen, we want to help this individual, and this individual that was there, she was challenged and disabled. And for our staff to go in there and help that helping hand, the expression on their face was just gold. At the same time, we've had some opportunity just to go back and see some of the individuals that we help, and to see the expression on their faces and go in there with a big hugs and a big smile and talking about the barbecue and what we're going to do in a couple of months when everything is settled. It gives hope, and that's what we came to provide. It's not only providing hope for our staff, but also for us internally, but also for the greater community. So it's been good.
In terms of flood mitigation, repairing damages, we have a washed out bridge. We have another bridge that is in use but damaged. So replacing the bridge will be a challenge. How to design our systems to be able to withstand this kind of event. The amount of work, we're going to have to put in a huge amount of work doing modeling, revising our flood mitigation measures, revisiting some of the work we did in recent years where water went over top like it wasn't even there. So there will be planning and revising those, looking at what our design event was. We'd originally designed everything to a 1 in 100 event. Now with this recent event that dwarfed what we previously had planned for, we'll have to look and see what we actually designed for in future.
I think you've got to look at investment against risk, and you always try and balance that. So you could say, okay, well, let's build and then construct infrastructure which will keep the water in the riverbeds for a 1 in 500 year event. But that's going to cost you $10 billion. Do you invest that $10 billion, or you take the risk that that 1 in 500 year event is not going to happen for another 400 years? So you're playing risk against cost. And you're doing that all the time in anything that you do with infrastructure. What we might look at is saying, well, if the climate is changing, can we work out what are the more likely events in the future and try and build infrastructure to try and help contain those events more than we did here. Basically what you try and do is predict what's going to happen for the lifetime of your structure based on what's been in the past and forecasting what's coming forward. The history that we're using is for one set of climate conditions, and if the climate is changing, it's going to be more fun trying to forecast and therefore design against events of the future. So I think it'll make us think a little bit more about have we got the right forecasts in the codes about what we might see as events that we have to work against.
Well, the engineers will be involved in a lot of areas, getting the plants up and operating back to their full capacity, looking at the banks of the river and determining what needs to be done there to stabilize that, reconstructing the bridges that have been damaged, the other areas, pathways, roadways that have been damaged, the engineers will be in doing that, and then testing all the systems and making sure that that works in the buildings and on the LRT.